I was going to say another amazing thing that I cannot believe you haven't mentioned, Dave, about Red Dead Redemption 2 is that you can just go around and pet dogs.
Yes, you can. And if you
Yeah.
pet enough dogs, it gets you
Yeah.
like respect or whatever it's called.
Yes, it's amazing.
Dog respect or like people respect?
Isn't it like something with your charisma or something like that? Like, I don't know.
It's
or
well, it's like your honor. That's what it is.
Yeah,
honor.
oh, that's it. Okay, yeah.
So if you if you harm animals, then you lose honor. If you like shoot,
and you're a monster. That's right.
If you shoot,
as you should.
Exactly.
If you shoot random people, you lose honor. And so there was a time there when I was just like blowing away random people.
Oh my
it's
God.
a fucking video game. And I saw this like, minus sign appear in the upper right, with a red, like a red silhouette of my face. And I'm like, what does that mean? So I look it up and it's like, you're losing honor. I'm like, oh, this is just like the old one.
Yeah, the game punishes you if you're a douchebag, which I love.
It really does.
Yeah.
So
yes, go ahead.
I was going to say it's funny because Zelda Breath of the Wild has a similar thing. Like there are dogs throughout the game, and dogs hang out around stables, and you can feed the dogs. Like basically, there are ways to like befriend the dogs, but one of the main ones is you can put food down, and then they eat the food, and there's like a little like glow that happens, and then that means the dog will follow you around. But you can also, if you're nice enough to the dog and feed it enough, it'll lead you to a treasure chest, which is pretty awesome.
That is amazing. It's a win-win.
That's my that's a win-win situation there.
Yeah,
I befriend a dog and I get treasure.
Yep. Yeah,
if only it worked like that in real life.
Oh, if only.
Isn't befriending a dog a treasure of its own?
Yes.
Yes, it is.
Absolutely. Podcast that doesn't give a shit about spoilers. We just want to talk about the movies. My name is Megan Kearns. I'm a freelance writer and film critic, editor of Bitchflix, and a member of the Boston Online Film Critics Association.
My name is Dave Riedel. I'm not sure who I write for anymore, and I'm a member of the Boston Online Film Critics Association.
My name's Evan Crean, kind of in the same boat. But I'm a co-chair of BAFCA and co-author of your 80s Movie Guide to Better Living.
Yeah, you are. It's a tradition. We got to keep it going, even in quarantine.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, we do.
So, as you can tell, listeners, just by that, we are still in quarantine. And so we are all still recording remotely. And we are talking about streaming films. So the 4 streaming films we're going to be talking about today are And Then We Danced, SELA and the Spades, Love, Wedding, Repeat, and Tigertail.
Yep. Yeah, we are.
I love the like cheerleadery element of it. Like, yeah. Mm-hmm. It's very supportive.
I'm waving pom-poms right now.
I know. I wish I could see you.
I am not waving pom-poms. Just
oh, man.
I would.
Don't ask me where I got them.
Pom-poms.
Oh,
Evan, where did you get them?
I told you not to ask me.
I was just going to say, don't ask. All right. On that note, I think we're going to get this show on the road. And the first film we're going to be talking about is And Then We Danced. And I am the only one who saw that this week. But
what?
Oh my God.
Wait a minute.
What?
You're the only one who saw it?
I sure am. Spoiler alert. I wish you guys had seen it and you, at some point, because it is leaving the Coolidge's virtual screening room tomorrow, which is where I saw it. But at some point, I know. At some point, you guys should definitely see this because this is a fantastic film. It is so good. I loved it. It was amazing. And this is a film about a Georgian dancer in Georgia, the country, not the state of Georgia.
Oh, man.
Yeah.
I was really hoping it was somebody from like Augusta, Georgia. That would have been. Yeah.
You know, I would have loved to have seen a, gay love story in Augusta, Georgia too, but not the case. It was in the country of Georgia, so it is a story about a young man who's a gay man, and he's a dancer in a dance company and does traditional Georgian dance. And the other thing is that for those who don't know, Georgia is an incredibly restrictive country and community for queer people, particularly, or I should say, especially has many homophobic laws and very homophobic views culturally, unfortunately. So this, I believe, was the first film that was filmed in Georgia that is a queer love story. And when this came out, there were protests. There were cops and bodyguards at screenings. When the director has said in interviews that when he was filming, he had to have like everything be incredibly secretive, like he couldn't have the title of the film or descriptions of anything. The choreographer who choreographed the dance routines in the film was not actually credited in the film in order to protect their identity. So,
wow.
Yeah. Yeah. So
Wow.
The production is really horrifying and terrifying. And the release was as well. But there were many people who came out and were clamoring to see this because it's something that's not shown. And Georgia's not a country that's typically portrayed on screen. So for various reasons, people did come out, which is great. And I'm glad they did because it is an incredible piece of art. And so the film starts off and it's in the dance studio, and we see the protagonist, Merab, and he's dancing with his best friend and longtime partner, Miriam. And it's interesting because dance is also bookended at the end of the film too, but we'll get to that in a moment. So Merab he lives with his mother and he lives with his brother, and his brother's kind of always getting into trouble. Like, kind of, as we learn later, he's getting into like drugs and has problems and things like that. So he has a good relationship with his family, but kind of has some struggles. There are some financial issues. Like he works as a waiter and he's helping out his mother and his grandmother, who he also lives with. And his dream is to be a dancer. And as he meets with his father, who also used to be a dancer, tells him that it's a dog's life. You destroy your body, and what are you doing it for? You know, basically just so you can be like some background dancer. And it's just really sad that this is his dream, and his father's not trying to be unsupportive, but he's just like, you know, it's such a hard life, and it's just, you know, such a hard career to pursue.
Yeah. So, he's being like medium unsupportive.
Yeah,
he's like, you could be a dancer, but you're never gonna be good enough, so you can't hack it.
Yeah, it's like, it's sad, but like the way it comes off on screen, it doesn't feel like, oh, this guy's such an asshole. It just feels like, oh, he's being very pragmatic, but it kind of sucks too. So this new dancer comes in, this new guy, and Irakli, and Merab immediately starts taking notice of him, and they become friends, and they start, you know, getting closer and spending a lot of time together. And Merab spends time at Irakli's family's house, and then all the dancers kind of go away on I don't know if it's like a weekend house or where it is, but they kind of go off to the country, and they're all like dancing for fun and having a good time. And in the woods, it's just Merab and Irakli, and then they start wrestling. And then Irakli pulls him close, and it's one of the sexiest like sex scenes, and it's just really tender and but passionate, and it just, yeah. So after that, Merab is like, he's smitten, and you know, he's in love, and he, you know, watches Irakli from afar, like when they're with other people, and like smiles, and he dances for him, and it's just very sweet, and it's very cute and sweet to see. But there's also some kind of darkness juxtaposed with that, because in the beginning of the film, his friend Miriam is in like the women's locker room, and two of the women are gossiping, and they're talking about this guy who was sent away for being caught having sex with a man, and he was sent away to a monastery. And one of the girls asks, she's like, oh, why did they do that? Like, why did they send him away? And the other girl's like, to make him normal again, of course. And it's like, oh, it's like this homophobic heteronormativity is so gross. And Miriam's just like observing, and you can't really tell like if she endorses this or is opposing this. So the film goes on, and then all of a sudden Irakli doesn't show up for practice one day, and Merab is naturally distraught because he's trying to get in touch with him. He can't get in touch with him, and you see him alone in his room, and he's still not able to get in touch with Irakli. And Irakli had earlier lost, he had a little gold earring, and he'd earlier lost it. And then at this point in the film, Merab pulls out the earring from like a little trinket box he has in his room, and he's like caressing the earring and like holding it, and it's so sad because it's like, oh no, he's like yearning for him, and it's just it's heartbreaking. But anyway, so then Merab's brother has to get married like all of a sudden because he like got a girl pregnant, so it's gonna be a wedding, a shotgun wedding, and they're getting married in 2 days. So at this wedding, Merab sees Irakli, and they have a moment to finally be alone. And he had told him on a phone call earlier, he's like, oh, my father was sick. I had to leave town. So they're finally alone in person. And Irakli says to him, he's like, I'm so sorry, I had to just leave. And he said, my father's still really sick. My mother's alone. And because of that, because it's just her, I got engaged. And it's like a knife to the gut. It's like so sad. And so they talk for a few moments more, and then Irakli leaves, and then the camera just follows Merab from his back and just watches him like meandering through this building, this house where the wedding reception is, and like all these people are celebrating and dancing and they're joyous, and Merab is just breaking. He's just crushed. And the camera then is from an upstairs window, and you see Merab outside from a distance, and he collapses like emotionally into his friend Miriam's arms, and he's just sobbing, and she just holds him, and it's such a lovely scene that she's so supportive. And then so then he, as the next day, or not the next day, but a little bit later, he's at dance, and then one of the male dancers calls him the F word. And he's like, your brother, yeah. And he's like, your brother knows. He's like, we all know. We saw you out last night, because he was out I think at a gay club, and he was, then he was in a district where there were either genderqueer or trans sex workers. And so apparently he was spotted. And yeah, so Merab is like pissed off. He's heartbroken. He's pissed off. So he starts to fight this guy. And then Miriam pulls him away. And she's like, what are you doing? You have to be more careful. And so, I'm telling things out of order. Sorry. So then anyway, there's so much good stuff in this film. So after the wedding, when he's heartbroken, he goes home, and Merab goes home, and his brother shows up, and his brother's like, his face is all like bloody and beaten up, which is kind of weird after your wedding. And his brother tells Merab, he's like, I got beaten up because someone called you the F word, and I had to protect your honor. And Merab's not saying anything. And he's like, did I do that in vain? And Merab takes a long pause, and he's like, maybe. And then he recoils because it looks like his hand is coming up, so he thinks his brother's going to hit him. And instead, in one of the tenderest scenes in the film, his brother like puts his hand around his neck and just caresses him. And he's like, you've always been such a much better man than I am. And he's like, you need to leave Georgia. There's no future for you here. And Merab, wow. And Merab's just like sobbing, and his brother's holding him. And it's this incredible moment, because the whole time his brother's like so macho, and you think he's going to be such a homophobic asshole, and he's just going to reject him. And he does the complete opposite. He just completely embraces him and loves him. And it's so lovely to see, and just heartbreaking too at the same time. Mm-hmm. So the final scene of the film is Merab dancing in this audition, and he had earlier hurt his foot in the film. So he's not dancing quite perfectly. And it's very obvious he's not dancing quite perfectly the way they want for these very stringent Georgian dance traditions and rules. And so he just dances the way he wants to, and men are supposed to dance very masculine, quote unquote, in a very stereotypical way. And he's not dancing that way. And one of the judges or instructors is like criticizing him to another instructor, saying, what is he doing? Look at his hands. And Merab's just like, fuck it, I'm just going to dance the way I want to. And clearly he is embracing his identity in his life, and it's just beautiful. And that's the film.
He danced the way he wanted to, and he left his friends behind.
Yes. And it weirdly reminds me or maybe not weirdly, but it reminds me of Zoe Saldana in Center Stage, which I love, even though it's not a great film. And she says, "I'm no longer dancing for them, I'm dancing for me." And it's such a simple line, but it's a line that just reminded me of that. And I was like, oh, that's so great.
Yeah, it is a great sentiment.
Yeah. Yeah, so it's a beautiful, beautiful film, and it's such an incredibly sensitive portrayal of being, queer, and especially in a restrictive, homophobic traditional community and place that, your very identity is illegal and criminal. So
it sounds really good.
It does.
It was great, and the dancing was good too.
Okay.
What more can you ask for in
Exactly.
a movie about dancing?
Indeed.
Exactly. So yes. So if you can see the film, and it's playing in virtual cinemas through independent theaters like the Coolidge for us. So, but yes. So the next film is SELA and the Spades. And I would also recommend that you guys watch this. And this will be coming out on Amazon on Friday, when the day this episode airs. So you should definitely see it. This is the directorial debut of Tyrisha Poe, and she wrote and directed the film. And it's basically a film that takes place at a private high school in Pennsylvania, and even though it was filmed in Massachusetts, interestingly enough. And it's all about power dynamics. And in an interview, she talked about how she loved villainous men. Like, she loved Tony Soprano, and she loved Walter White, and she loved seeing them and how they kind of had not redemptive arcs, but they were kind of still, like, people still wanted to follow them, even though they were doing these, heinous crimes and horrible things. Mm-hmm. And she wanted to show a Black girl doing this. And I love that. And I think this is great. And so there are almost no white people in the film, which is fantastic. And and also in this interview, she talks about this too, about how if you look at the film, if you look at the background characters, they're white. So it's clearly not trying to say like this school is the most diverse, or it's not trying to say that this is a Black private school by any means. But she wanted to focus on the people of color who are normally relegated to the background in films that take place in a high school, mm-hmm. which is great.
Yeah, well, in a private school setting, honestly, that is the case. As someone who went to boarding school in rural Connecticut, mm-hmm. that was the thing. Like, there were not a lot of students of color, and they were kind of, not to say that like academically, athletically, they weren't excelling and doing great things, but like socially, like they were kind of not relegated to the background, but they were kind of like in an area of their own.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of segregation, in schools and in, communities. So yeah, that's not a surprise. And she also went to private high school too. So she's definitely drawing on her own experiences. Although I think she said her high school, because of the way the funding was or something, hers was more diverse than others. But yeah, she definitely wanted to look at the privilege and how it's not as diverse as it should be. But yeah, so mm-hmm. This film is, especially in the beginning, but even throughout, it's very stylized, a very stylized high school film. Kind of like reminded me sort of Clueless or Juno, like in the way the visuals are very stylized, and like there are these 5 factions within the school, and like you get a kind of description of each faction and what they do and where they come from. And mm-hmm. the one that the film focuses on is SELA and the Spades. And SELA runs the Spades, which are basically a group that sell drugs to the other kids. So she's like this like kind of drug mob boss like in the film. And she is a very interesting character. She is very different than any character I've really seen, particularly for a Black girl, which is great. She is very much in control. She knows what she wants. She knows who she is. And she also makes a point to talk to one of her friends about how she's abstinent by choice, and not for typical reasons that you might see in film, like where someone's like abstinent for religious reasons or something like that. Like she's mm-hmm. just like, she's like, that doesn't interest me. I have no time for that. And it's just, there was something really refreshing about it. And like, I almost thought like, oh, is she asexual? Like, and the film doesn't get into that and it doesn't explore it, but I almost thought that because I was like, wow. And that's so fascinating. You know, and again, this interview was amazing. It was at Shondaland that Tyresha Poe was talking. And she said that, you know, so often in high school films and films in general, you know, power is shown through sexuality and sex. And she didn't want that. She wanted to show a different side, and she wanted to show power through friendships and how friendships kind of break your heart, you know, first, arguably before, you know, any kind of lover will break your heart. And so SELA is, she's a very intense person, and her mother, played by Gina Torres, whom I love. And I always,
she's great.
She's so great. Always a delight to see. And she has one very short scene, but it's a very impactful scene because she's the type of mom who, when she calls SELA, and SELA, she's like, "What's new?" And SELA's like, "Oh, I got my test back." She's like, "I got a 93 in math." And she's like, "Why wasn't it 100?" And so she's like, her mother's like, yeah, her mother's a hard ass. She's clearly riding her, wanting her to be perfect. And SELA has that kind of need for perfection too, from herself as well as for others. She's very high standards. And so she's very in control, very much knows what she wants. And she is a senior, so she's going to be leaving. And she and her best friend, Maxie, who is a guy, they talk about who's going to take her place, like who's going to be the next person to take over the Spades when she's gone. And she meets this new student, Paloma, who is at least a year, if not 2 years younger than her. And something about Paloma, who is a photographer, sparks her interest. And it's funny, I almost got like a queer vibe throughout the film. From some of the interviews I've read, it doesn't seem like that's intentional, but there definitely seems to be this kind of like queerness going on, because like they say to each other, like love, and like there's a lot of like hearts and affection, and they're very touchy with each other. So anyway, I was hoping it was kind of going in that queer route. It didn't, but that's totally okay. It's still a great film nonetheless. But yeah, and Tyresha Poe, the director, has she's also a photographer, and so clearly this is kind of, Paloma's kind of her proxy in that way, and that she's a photographer. And there are a lot of shots that kind of reminded me of like cameras or looking through like an aperture or something like that. And Paloma basically worships SELA like very early on. Like she's just kind of enraptured with her and follows her, and you know, wants to be around her. And she's kind of like, oh, I can't believe this person wants to take me under their wing and have me at gatherings and events. And so SELA basically shows her the ropes about how to sell drugs, and like how you like what neighborhoods to go to get the drugs, and which ones you don't go to alone, and things like that, just kind of the ins and outs. And eventually SELA feels that Paloma is kind of has too big of a head, because Paloma is really excited, and Paloma has been helping out SELA so much, and like their prom got canceled, and like Paloma kind of stepped in and was like, okay, here's what we're going to do. We're going to have it in the woods. We're going to do this. We're going to do that. And so throughout the film, there's been this talk of this, this girl, Tessa, and no one really has said like who Tessa is or what happened to her, but there's a lot of rumblings about how there used to be a war, and how like the quote factions like didn't get along, and something terrible happened with Tessa, but nobody knows, or not that nobody knows, nobody will talk about it, and Paloma doesn't know what it is. And so finally, one of the other leaders of the factions tells Paloma, like, you know, you should watch yourself with SELA, and she threw Tessa under the bus, and you know, she framed her, and so she got expelled. And so Paloma's aware of this, so she asks SELA, and SELA seems very controlled and poised, but you can kind of see under the veneer that she's pissed. And so as they're about to go to prom, SELA has a little bottle of pills that she's kind of like secretly holding onto, or secretly hiding. Obviously, secretly hiding, that's great. But she's hiding from Paloma so Paloma won't see it. And she's asking Paloma questions, and Paloma's talking about how great the Spades are going to be and how they're going to be huge next year. And Sela's like, they're already huge. And she's like, oh, no, I know. I'm just thinking of how I'm going to take things in a different direction. And Sela wants none of that. So she basically drugs her. And so she puts these pills. Yeah, she puts these pills in her drink. Yeah, it's really disturbing. And so Paloma has a drink, like it's like in a nip bottle or something like that. And then so they join up with everybody. There's like a pre-party before the prom. And then Paloma starts doing She does some other drugs, like I don't know if it's coke or something else. And we've seen the kids do drugs before, which is always kind of interesting because the one thing I've learned, I feel like, from drug films is if you're a drug dealer, you don't sample the merchandise. But anyway, but these kids clearly don't listen to that. So
I think the
don't
correct
get high
term,
on your own supply.
Exactly.
Right? Yeah, it seems just stupid. It seems like a waste of money. And I feel like SELA would have told her that. But yeah, so Paloma she takes something and SELA's trying to stop her because she can see she's about to. And yeah, Paloma's clearly not doing well. So then SELA goes to Maxie, who she's had her best friend, who she's had a falling out with because he didn't do what she wanted him to do because he was kind of sort of fucking up. He was like not taking things as seriously as she wanted. So she goes to him and she's like, what happens if you take a couple of those pills? And he's like, a couple? That's way too much. And she had put like 3 or 4 like in her drink. And she's like, what if it's more? And he's like, what did you do? He's like, I can't go through this again. So clearly she had drugged the previous friend, Tessa, when she had Tessa take the fall a couple years earlier. So they're trying to get to Paloma, who's like hallucinating and not doing well and puking. And it's nighttime and they're in the woods, so they can't really see very well. So they finally get to Paloma and she's like running. She finds out she finds out through Maxie because Maxie's like, I'm going to tell her, you know, and so SELA admits that she drugged her. But she's still like making excuses for herself. She's like, well, you were too arrogant and blah, blah, blah. So anyway, Paloma starts running away because she can't believe her best friend, or who she thought was her best friend, would betray her like that and drug her and violate her consent. So she starts hauling ass and running, and she's about to run off of the edge of not a cliff, but like a giant hill, and probably, you know, could have like broken her neck or injured herself terribly. But they catch her as she's like falling, and so they pull her up, and they are walking back to the camera and they all look like they've just been through the ringer and beaten up, and that's where it ends. And so this film is super interesting. It's very stylized, but still very grounded in reality, which I liked. And there's so many messages here about power and about control and who has it. And there's within the first 8 minutes, there's this amazing scene where SELA is talking to the camera. So she's talking to the audience, but she's in the film, she's talking to Paloma, who's taking her photograph and the photograph of her spirit squad, because SELA is the leader of the spirit squad. And it's like a 2-minute speech about how girls' bodies when they're 17 are completely controlled and everyone is trying to tell them what to do. And like schools tell you, you know, your skirt's too short, you can't wear this, can't do that, you have to cover up, but they don't tell the boys they have to cover up or, you know, keep their dick in their pants. And, you know, she says like your parents will tell you can't wear that, you can't do that. And she's like, you know, nobody should be telling you what you should be doing with your skin and your body. And she's like, and so in Spirit Squad, we choreograph our routines. We decide what we're going to wear. We decide how short our skirts are. She's like, because when you're 17, you have to take control and you have to seize it and you have to hold on tight as you can because they're always trying to take it away. And it's this really interesting thing about, you know, about friendship and betrayal and power dynamics. And, you know, SELA's not like, you can argue either way, like, you know, did she obviously did a horrible thing, but does it make sense? Probably not. But then you also kind of, in a way, I felt bad for her just because she's dealing with all this pressure from the school, from society, from her mother. And she's so obsessed with control and asserting herself. And it's completely understandable, but it also obviously corrupts and taints her friendships, which is awful. So it's fascinating to watch this all play out. And the visuals are great. The music is great. Yeah, it's really great film.
I'm intrigued.
I'm intrigued too.
Yay. Yeah, it's funny because I wasn't sure if I was going to be super into it because certain stylized films, especially with high school, always have kind of a fakeness to them. And at first it started that way and I was like, uh-oh, I don't know if I'm going to like this. But I was like, nope, just got to, you know, hold on and wait and see how it goes. And I loved this. I thought this was so fantastic. Great film. I can't wait to see it. Also, in a way, and it's funny, this also reminded me of Anna Rose Holmer's The Fits, which I loved. And it's funny because Tyree Chapeau did some of the photography for The Fits, which is a beautiful film and also about Black girls and friendships and dancing as well. So, but anyway, great film.
Well, you said dancing, so you had me. Just kidding.
Yeah.
You had me for the other reason.
Yeah. This is not about dancing. I mean, it's about like, there's, some Spirit Squad kind of dance moves, dance-esque moves, but yeah. But anyway, yeah. But really good. And great acting. The two women who play Paloma and SELA are just spectacular. They're so good. I can't wait. Like, they've been in other films and TV series, but they're not big yet, and I cannot wait to see them explode because they're just so good. And they have such a great rapport and chemistry with each other.
Nice.
Yes, it is nice. So on that nice note, I think we should talk about our next film.
Talk about something that's not nice.
Yes, and that's going to be Love, Wedding, Repeat.
Hate this fucking movie.
Well, I didn't think it was that bad, but fuck, man.
This, I think, is one of the worst rom-coms I've ever seen, and maybe one of the worst movies I've ever seen. It is horrible.
Evan, may I please redirect you to a glimpse inside the mind of Charles, whatever, the third.
Swan the Third, yeah. Touche. Yeah. I had to watch this. I had to watch Love, Wedding, Repeat in pieces because I couldn't take it all in one dose. That should tell you something.
I did it all in one go because I had to. Although until the clock winds back, the first time I was like, this may be my undoing. This movie is so awful. And then the second go around was at least palatable,
Yes, I agree that it was better.
I don't
than what came before.
Yeah, the first section, the first 45 or 50 minutes is so awful and completely misguided. Mm-hmm. And this movie is full of all sorts of problems, this is a misunderstandings movie. This is Three's Company, the movie, It's like it's like this fucking guy, you have the opening scene, this fucking guy you haven't seen in 20 years or however long it is, 15 years, like bumps into you in Rome when you're about to like smooch gorgeous Olivia Munn, and you're going to like interrupt that moment. Fuck you. Mm-hmm. No, you're not. No, you're not. No person would do that. And if that person did, that person doesn't get to, deserve to smooch Olivia Munn. Okay, so.
Right. That person in this movie being Sam Claflin.
Doing a very Hugh Grant impersonation.
Yeah. Yes. But like way less good and way less good looking, in my opinion.
Well, also way less good material to work with. Don't leave that out. The poor guy is fucking floundering because this script is... Yeah. I remember when the voiceover popped up, I was like, what is this fucking like Helen Mirren, Judi Dench voiceover person doing? What is this? And that's, the first line, it's got blah, 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 where they throw the word shit in at the end. And I was just like, this movie's just dumb. This movie thinks it's smart, but it's dumb.
And then you ran into a twat, and you're just like, all right, I see what we're doing here. Yeah, I thought it was Judi Dench at first, and then I looked it up, and it's Penny Ryder who's doing the voice.
Penny
like,
Ryder.
Yeah, the voiceover is dumb. Most of the movie takes place at a wedding. It's like Jack, the main character, his sister Haley is getting married, and it's at her wedding. And like Dave is saying, like the first like chunk of the movie is like one timeline, because then like in the middle the movie's like, hey, there's infinite timelines, so let's show you what some of those other timelines were happening, and then like let's settle on quote unquote the best putting this in quotes, the best timeline, the best result of all of these equations. And it uses this whole stupid metaphor of like these children running around switching place cards at the table at the wedding, and that's all the infinite combinations of people sitting next to each other and things going wrong or going right.
Which is another stupid thing. Like fucking Jack, Sam Claflin or whatever his name is, wouldn't realize that, that's not... Who forgets where people are sitting when you're spiking their drink? Are you kidding me?
Yeah. Yes.
I mean,
it's
to
moronic.
It is moronic, but I will say, to the film's credit, no one had actually sat down yet. It was just the place cards that were there, so arguably you might not remember.
Right.
But that's
also, who are these fucking kids?
Right,
Yeah.
I agree.
Get them out of here. They should be switching place cards.
Yeah,
I agree.
Someone should be watching them.
Why are they here? Why do we not see them at any other time in the movie? Like, at the kids' table or whatever. Yeah, it's just this very, it's at least it's tonally consistent in the sense that it's bad. But and
it's poorly written.
Yeah,
it's completely unfunny.
Poor
There's
Olivia Munn.
nothing funny in this movie.
Yo, go ahead. What has happened to Olivia Munn? Where did she go? I mean, she was like almost a movie star, and then in the past 2 or 3 years, just terrible movie after terrible movie, and she's a good performer. She's not so good in this because, when she has to give that cancer speech about her mother, it's kind of like, I'm not buying this. And also, what was your direction? Just read these lines. I mean, I don't know.
Yeah. It's also just inappropriate for a wedding.
Yeah. Yeah. And then the cokehead guy being played for laughs the whole time. Just like, look, I'm all for playing drugs for laughs and things like that, but when you show multiple scenes of him like clutching his chest because it seems like he's about to have a cocaine-induced heart attack, that's really not so funny. So, pick a line. Is he the joke or is it a serious thing? And in a movie like this, he has to be the joke. I get it. But he's also completely unbelievable. Like, if they had just said, my ex-boyfriend, Mark, that would have, but it's just some guy that she knew in school, and then she was like, met him in a bar and fucked him. But no. In real life, yes. In the movies, not a chance.
Mm-mm.
So I'm finding a lot of humor listening to you guys talk about it, because I actually didn't want to talk about this movie at all because it's so terrible.
Well, do you remember when you emailed us and you were like, I'm going to watch Love, Wedding, Repeat? And I was like, I saw the trailer. Pass. Hard pass.
Okay, listen. First of all, if you know anything about me, I don't typically watch trailers. So I had not seen the trailer. I had no idea. I was just like, "Ooh, a new rom-com. I'm in. At a wedding, I'm doubly in."
I totally understand.
You understand. You get me. You get me. Yeah, this movie is boring. It's mind-numbingly bad. It is. I mean, you guys already said this. It's poorly written, not funny. I could not fucking care less about these people. They're all piles of trash. I hate them. I hate this movie. And what pisses me off is that this is a potentially, and I mean, it's not an original concept, but it's a potentially interesting conceit. And it, we've talked about this before. It could have been like Run Lola Run. It could have been like Clue. Could have been like Groundhog Day or Edge of Tomorrow. It could have been any one of those where we get to see multiple outcomes if just one variable had been different. Sure, that could have potentially garnered some, laughs or some interesting plot developments or what have you. But I don't even fucking care. I almost shut this movie off so many times. And and that's very rare for me to do. And it was just so terrible.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it sucks.
It's horrible. Horrible.
I'm going to throw this out there because I don't usually watch trailers either. I have started watching trailers on Netflix originals if they're available because, Netflix, their movies are so strange. It's like, they're bad the instant you start watching them, but the trailers tell you the same thing. The trailers don't do a good job of selling their product on Netflix. So if you see a bad trailer, you can skip that movie, So that's why I watch them now, because I'm like, oh, these are actually a clear indication of what I'm about to watch. Dog shit. Pass.
I know. When I watched this, I was like, oh God, I hope you guys didn't watch this.
Well, I don't really have anything else to say about it other than, there are just so many things that are bad or dumb or misguided about them. The one thing that I remember thinking was kind of funny was when Jack accidentally drank the sleeping whatever it was. And his reaction, it was like watching that guy Brian go through it. Was it Brian? Was that his name? The best man or maid of honor or whatever he was.
Yes, he was the maid of honor.
I was like, I
was
just know
insisted
him
on
from
calling
Game
him
of
the maid of honor.
Thrones. Yeah, I just know him
Yeah.
from Game of Thrones. So I was like,
It was just so awful. That whole thing with him, and then like the sister character. Also like the guy comes into the wedding. Fucking yes, have security, escort him out.
right.
There's a crazy person at my wedding. He's shouting and like doing coke, and then you can say, "Oh, it's this guy I used to go out with Roberto," if Roberto even asks, and blah blah blah.
Yeah,
That was a big exhale. Big exhale.
I will say, I mean, like, I have a couple things to say, and one of them is I cannot believe. I mean, I can believe, but I cannot believe that the ending of that first storyline is the redhead knocking over her husband over
Off a
the
balcony.
and he's about to fucking die. Like, that's because she fucked some other guy. Like, that's the way it's gonna end. Like, mid-air, mid-fall. Like, oh my god, that was so terrible.
It's such a strange choice.
Such a strange
It really
choice.
was.
Not a good strange. Just bad.
Yeah.
The thing I will say about Sam Claflin is that I actually like him. Like, I thought he was a really good romantic co-lead in the absolutely awful and ableist and fuckery film Me Before You. And he was really good in it. And Emilia Clarke was really good in it. Terrible material, but they were both really good. And so he clearly has some talent, and he clearly can be a good romantic, lead or co-lead. But good God, not in this pile of shit.
Not in this pile of shit.
No, and the reason I didn't want to talk about this film is because you guys know I always feel bad shitting on a film. I always feel bad. I always feel guilt because obviously we know this. Like, there's a lot of work that's put into a film, and I personally feel tremendously guilty. Unless a film is like super racist or super misogynistic, then I don't fucking care. But this film is just so bad. It's just so bad.
Sure is.
It's irredeemably bad.
Yes.
Yeah.
Like,
there's nothing you could do to make this better. You would have to burn the movie and then destroy the script in your shredder and start over with different characters in a different setting at a different wedding.
Yes. It's funny that you say that because I was thinking, wow, if we could burn this movie, it might be better. It's funny we both went to arson, burning, pyro, Mancy. Anyway.
Yeah.
No kidding.
I'm so glad that I'm not alone, though, because I was like, what the fuck was that?
I know. Well, shall we move on then? Because
yes, please.
I mean, I can talk negative for a good while, but I don't have kind things to say about Tigertail either. So
What?
Tigertail was like a really slow made-for-TV movie.
No.
Yeah,
slow. I will grant you.
I could not disagree more. Could not disagree more.
Well, I'm sure you could, but
maybe I can.
But I didn't. It wasn't. It's not bad. I'm not going to say that it's bad, but it has one of the big problems that people have not figured out is, when you have a lead character who's so unappealing and such a douchebag, it doesn't really matter. You have to make him Tony Soprano or, who are you talking about when you're talking about SELA and the Walter White? It's got to be someone like that who's also really dynamic in some way that you're like, I just can't, but instead you're watching this guy fucking cook dinner alone, make his own tea and just like stare off into space. And then you go back to all the flashbacks and the reasons he did everything he did are stupid. So it's like,
no.
I don't agree with that at all.
I don't agree with your assessment at all, Dave. Sorry. Sorry.
If he had just said to his mother, why don't we move to the United States and everything will be awesome? And then she could have been like, no, I'm not fucking leaving Taiwan. Fuck you. And then he wouldn't have had the life that he didn't want to have. It's another one of those. It's not Three's Company, but it's,
No, I still disagree with you wildly.
Well, I think that.
Let's hear it then.
Ooh,
I mean, you guys do your, I would like to know why you like it. I'm not trying to be confrontational. I just meant, I want to hear why you like it.
Genuinely curious because you don't get it. Yeah.
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 Okay.
I will just say real quick again, I don't think it's bad. It's not a bad movie, but that's where, okay.
Now that you've given that disclaimer.
Yeah.
Hmm.
So Evan, you were
All
going to
right.
start saying something and then I interrupted you because that's what I
Yeah,
do.
no, I mean, so the movie is about a guy. He's Taiwanese, and he's played by Sima, and it's a very kind of like sprawling movie. That's like you see him in his youth, you see him as in his adult years, you see him as in his current age with he has grown children, he's divorced. Like it's very much like a sprawling kind of drama about his life. And there's a lot of voiceover in the beginning, and at first I was like, why is there so much? But then like it kind of makes sense like where it gets to later in the film. But I've just found this, I agree with you that it's slow, Dave. I found it to be very moving, despite the fact that so much of it is sad. Like, it's this movie that's about love, it's about loss, it's about dreams and like dreams that don't ever come to fruition, and like the pain of that, but also the American dream, and how it's like it's very much it's an immigrant story. And I think what's interesting is that this is written and directed by Alan Yang, who worked on Master of None. And I think there's really interesting immigrant storytelling in Master of None, like the idea that before it centers around like his character's parents and Aziz Ansari's parents, like the idea that like as immigrants they had these full lives before they even were born. So in this case it's kind of similar. It's like Sima's character, he's lived this whole life and he's made all these decisions, and he's gotten to the point where like now he's in America, he's married, he's having children, and like there are all these things that have happened to him in his past that his children just like aren't even aware of and don't understand how that has shaped his persona and his decisions and the way that he's parented. And I think that that's really fascinating to me, is kind of seeing that journey, seeing all the things, the decisions he makes, and how those kind of like impact his life in the moment, and how those kind of translate to the person that he becomes, which ultimately is not a very good parent.
Right.
But what I like is that it does build to a redemption. And to me, that's what, like, although I found it slow and I found it extremely sad for like the majority of the movie, I like that it kind of, he does get to a redemptive place by the end, and it does end on this kind of like uplifting moment where he's finally getting to know, he's finally opening up to his daughter, and she's getting to learn all these things about him and to understand him better. And I think that is really awesome and really cool that he's like taking her on this trip and he's showing her all these places from his youth, and that's the voiceover, is him explaining all these things about himself.
And he finally cries after being told the entire movie by his elders, don't cry, and telling his daughter, don't cry, it doesn't do you any good. And then he just sobs when he sees his old burned out house. Yeah.
Yeah, that is a great moment. And I think I understand like your gripes with the film, but I don't know, for me it resonated more with like I said, seeing Alan Yang's kind of previous work and seeing how this kind of connects with that, and taking a step further and showing like the fact that you see him, you see his daughter, you see his mother, and you see them having very similar experiences despite coming from different circumstances. Like there's elements that are the same, like when they're juxtaposing them doing the kind of same things at the same time in their separate places, like their experiences are so similar, and that they share a lot of the same thoughts and emotions, and they don't even realize it, which I think, I don't know, that resonated with me. But I'm talking a lot. What do you think, Megan?
No, I was glad you did, because I talked a lot for the first half of the show, so I wanted to let you have the floor, let you guys have the floor. Yeah, I absolutely loved this film. Like adored, like thought this was brilliant, thought it was gorgeous, loved it. I was sobbing through most of the film, especially at the end. The last 10 minutes just wrecked and destroyed me. I also am a fan of Alan Yang's work. I loved his work on Parks and Rec, and The Good Place, in addition to Master of None. so I already was familiar with his work more on a comedic level, but as well as, kind of a comedic level, but also mixed with some sentimentality. But this is such a personal film. Like, it's so clearly a personal film. And it is. This is the story of his father. And he got the spark, Alan Yang got the spark for this when he went on a trip to Taiwan with his father. And his father was like showing him all the places and that, he lived in. And his, father worked in a factory, and so did his grandmother. And it's very clear that this is such a personal film, and it's, meticulously so. And I love the flashbacks. I almost wish they weren't quite so linear. Like, I would have liked if they were moved around a little bit more, just kind of the way memories flow. That's something I always loved about the film Wild, is that, the memories kind of come as they come, not in a linear fashion. But that's really the only thing I would change, because I love that we have a window to his previous life, through those flashbacks. And it's so sad because he has all of these aspirations and all of these dreams that he's going to have this better life, in the US, and he's going to bring his mother, and it's going to be amazing. And yes, you can arguably say that, like, oh, if he had just talked about it with his mother first, maybe that wouldn't happen. But I don't think that's the case. I think he was determined to go. I mean, that's why he left the love of his life behind, because he wanted to get the fuck out and go to the US, because he thought it was going to be so much better. He thought it was going to be, so many more opportunities. And I think one of the most heartbreaking scenes is the montage of the monotony of him opening the grate to the grocery store, then mopping, then closing the grate, just over and over and over. And it's so sad that that's what his life is. And his life is just passing him by. And clearly, as we see, like, with his ex-wife, when she finally says, like, I'm leaving you, the kids are gone, I've got no reason to stay. I always thought you'd care about somebody besides yourself, but you never will. It's such a, gutting statement. And, it's like, that was like, his marriage was, arguably wasted. I mean, you could say no, because he had his, 2 kids, but it's just so sad, like the loss of time and the loss of, goals and dreams, and how he could have been with the love of his life. And it's so sad that then you find out he finds her on Facebook, and, and I love Joan Chen, and it's great that she has this, small role. But like, she's living in the US too. And like, so he could have gone with her, and it's so awful. And Evan, I'm so glad you brought up the point about the, kind of mirroring with Pinju, and his daughter Angela, and how, like, you see them both, like, eating alone and doing the same things alone. And, and you find out throughout the film that, like, he's stubborn, and so is she, and he can't get along with people, and so can't she. And the fact that there's so much about him she doesn't know, and so she can't connect with him, and she can't relate and understand, even though they're both so similar, and they're both, in some ways making the same choices and same mistakes. And I just loved this. This was such a sad lamentation on time and loss, but also how the American dream is arguably great in some ways, but also fucking not in other ways.
It's a sham.
Yes, it is a sham.
This is the one thing I think it really got right, was that the American dream will destroy you.
Yes, and I love that we see that. And what I also love about this film is that even though it's Pinju's film, I love that we see Zhen, like, her perspective. Like, she wants to be a teacher, and she wants, she has goals and she has dreams, and she befriends the older lady who's from Taiwan too, and has dinner with them, and like, she feels so lonely, and she goes to the laundromat just so she's not lonely. Like, it's so fucking sad. And I love that we see her, because I feel like in another lesser film we wouldn't have seen her perspective. Like, the film just wouldn't give a shit and wouldn't care, but we do see her, how she feels about things. And we also, find out about how Juan feels about things, when the two of them reunite at, near the end of the film at dinner, and it's just, it's so much wasted time, and it's just so sad. But that's what a lot of life is. A lot of life is wasted time and making shitty choices. And it's easy to look back and say, like, why didn't this person do this? Or why didn't I do that? Or why didn't we figure it out? But sometimes people are stupid, and you just don't. And I think this film captures that perfectly. And I am not an immigrant. I mean, well, obviously I was at some point, like, you know, ancestrally, but I myself am not. And so this is an experience I don't know. I can only know through friends or from reading about it or watching it. But from what I've read and hear, it feels like it got so much so right, you know, about those expectations that people have when they, you know, come here, and the expectations they have on their children too, you know, to make something and, you know, of themselves. And, you know, because, you know, they came here and they sacrificed so much, you know, so the parents want their children, you know, to do big things. And I think this film gets it right on so many levels. And I usually don't like narration. And so, Evan, it was funny that you mentioned the narration, and it does make sense for it. But I love that at the end of the film, like the last like 5 minutes, 10 minutes, there is narration, but a lot of the scenes are just wordless. And I just love that. And I love that it just speaks for itself. And I just think this was great. And I love this film. Anyway.
As a main character, though, he can be frustrating.
Oh, God,
because he's just like, especially when they show like the present day version of him, and he just sits there silently not saying anything while his daughter is like crying and talking about how her relationship fell apart, or it's like he just doesn't know how to communicate with people, and it's so frustrating to watch him just sit there in silence to the point where like his daughter like leaves him at a restaurant and he's just sitting there. I mean, you're like, say something, right? Say anything, even if it's the wrong thing, just say something.
Yeah, and she's like begging him to do that, and he just doesn't. And like, it's clear that he's such a shitty communicator, because like he's so awful to Jen, or he's so bad to her, like talking about like complaining like there's no food in the house, or, you know, when you have, you know, why would you want to go be a teacher, because, you know, when we have kids you're just going to be home anyway, so who cares? Like, he's basically shitting all over her goals and dreams, which he knew before they even came to the US. But it's so sad. There are these moments where like he's trying to dance with her because he wants to remember Juan, and like she doesn't want to dance. And then, you know, he buys the keyboard so they can, you know, play music together, because music was the thing he had, you know, with the love of his life. And, you know, and she doesn't really want anything to do with that. And it's like he's doing the completely wrong things, like with this transference of his like love and romance onto his wife. And it's so misguided, but it's so sad nonetheless. And it's just, yeah. So yes, he's infuriating. He fucks up, but I think that makes him more real because he does.
Fair.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
Fair statement. No disagreements there. I just didn't like it. I will give props though to the last 10 minutes when there is no speaking and they're just traveling to all of his traveling back to his childhood home. That was well done. And I don't want to say that the movie wasn't well done. It's just, it's really hard for me to get on board with people who suck. when I feel like,
fair,
you know, and not, I don't know. That's just kind of a really, really reductive thing to say, but because I like all kinds of terrible characters all the time, but this guy was like terrible in a way that was, maybe it was because it was so. You've probably known this person or been related to them in some way. I have not been related to this kind of guy, but or I am not, I should say. But it's like, you know, it's hard to talk, but it's also, you know, just make an effort, man. Just you've seen how your life has fallen around your feet, so like, okay, now you're 70 years old, fucking get it together. Still takes you 85 minutes to get it together. Come on, man.
I mean, I don't, that's the thing. Like, I don't disagree with you. But at the same time, I mean, change is really hard and scary. And sure, personally, I'm like, suck it the fuck up, get your shit together, you know, don't be a shitty dad to your, you know, amazing daughter who fucking needs you and is like crying out for you to connect with her. Like, yeah, I mean, absolutely. I'm thinking that simultaneously while I'm thinking, oh my God, this poor guy, his whole life, it, you know, sucks because it didn't go the way he planned or the way he thought. Doesn't that suck? And like, so there are these two, you know, divergent thoughts that are running simultaneously through my head. And I think because for me, the acting was just so well done that even though this guy is so not sympathetic and likable in a traditional sense, I think I really bought into what he was experiencing, and I really went on this journey with him and really felt for him. Like, God, it must be horrible to be, you know, like 75, 80 years old and being like, what the fuck happened to my, or maybe not even that old. I don't know how old he is, but like, oh my God, what the hell happened to my life? Like, that's just so sad. You know, and he talks about right from the beginning of the film that, you know, when he was a kid, that was the happiest time of his life. And that's just like, oh my God, that's so sad. And like, there's hope because like his ex-wife, you know, she's found a new person and she's in a happy relationship and she's teaching, you know, and she seems to have a great relationship with her kids. Like that's awesome. And that's great. And so I think, you know, I think the moment of redemption at the end of the film, you know, with Angela and her father, I think there is hope that maybe there's a crack in this armor and he actually will be able to open up maybe a little bit more, maybe not fully, but a little bit more. Especially since he's telling her the whole story of his life now.
Yeah. And I love that it's when he reconnects with his, you know, the love of his life, it's that she gives him that advice.
Yes.
Like, you need to open up more. And it breaks my heart that he has this connection with her. And then you like find out like, oh, like she's married and she's happy. So it's just not like they're going to rekindle their romance.
Right.
It's just like now they're just really good friends.
Dude, if they'd rekindled their romance, this would have gone from like a bad movie to the worst movie ever made. I mean, I'm so glad they didn't rekindle. No, because
I don't.
Like, what are the chances that her husband's dead or she's divorced or whatever? You know? No. So, or that they're just going to have a tawdry affair. I mean, whatever.
Yeah. No, I'm glad it didn't go that route either. I'm really glad that it's like, nope, she's got her own life and she had an amazing life and she's still leading an amazing life, you know, traveling and, you know, in a seemingly happy marriage. Like, good for her. She deserved that. You know, she didn't deserve
she was better off without him.
She was better off without him, and so is his ex-wife. Yeah. They both were better off without him. You know?
Ouch.
Yeah, I mean, it's true, but it's so sad, but it's so true. I mean, he is so emotionally broken, he just can't be with someone at this point or arguably even before. But yeah, it just, yeah, it's so sad. So much of it is so sad.
Okay. Well, you guys have not spoiler pieced me into wanting to watch it again, but I certainly understand where you're coming from.
Yeah. I mean, I'm not going to watch it again.
Oh, I might. I loved it.
It was so sad.
I know.
It was good.
It. I want to revel in my sadness. Especially those last 10 minutes. I might watch those last 10 minutes again. That was perfection. So good.
I'll tell you off mic what movie I want to watch when I want to cry. Off mic.
Okay, off mic.
I'm certain Megan's going to be like, "No, Dave, that movie sucks." So yeah.
Maybe not. No, I'm curious. I'm challenged. I feel challenged. You know, the thing of it is, I don't think I could come up with 1 or even 5 because I cry at so many movies. So.
Oh, sure, but this is one that always just sends me over the edge. But we can talk about that later.
We'll talk about it later. Yes. All right. Do we have anything else we want to say about Tigertail?
I do not.
Oh, I do have one more little thing. What I also loved about this, and it reminded me of a film that came out earlier this year, The Photograph, in just that you don't really know, and Evan, I know you said this, you don't really know your parents, or like you don't really know that they led these lives beforehand, and it kind of reminded me of that too, and I liked that. I liked that there was another story about that. So anyway, but okay, so let's recap. So Tigertail, I think we're very much split on.
Yes, but it's 2-1, so 67% is a passing grade. So.
That is true. All right, and we would definitely say pass on Love, Wedding, Repeat.
Oh man,
good God, such a hard pass.
I mean,
sticking yourself with a rusty nail, it's more productive.
Yeah,
something about a rusty nail and something is more productive. I'm not sure. But I think you get the message. Don't watch it. And then I would absolutely enthusiastically say, see SELA and the Spades. It's so great. And I would also enthusiastically say, see And Then We Dance, because it's also amazing. So yes.
Okay.
So not
nice.
I would agree with all those based on the conversations we just had.
Fabulous. Love it. All right. Well, so thank you so much, listeners, for listening to this week's Spoiler Piece Theater. You can find us wherever you listen to podcasts. Find us on Libsyn, on Apple, on what are the other places, guys? Everywhere, right?
Spotify.
All the places.
Spotify,
Yeah,
YouTube,
anywhere.
you name it. All right.
Yep.
And you can also find us on social media, of course. You can find us on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram at SpoilerPiece. And we love it when you retweet, like, share our photos and our links. We love that. We also love to hear from you. So please feel free to email us at SpoilerPiece as well. Or, yes, it's spoilerpiece@gmail.com.
Yeah.
And you could also call us at
862-21-PEACE.
Yes, thank you. And we look forward to hearing your messages, your emails, your questions, your comments. Please let us know what you like and what you want to know, what you want to hear. And if you like us, you can rate us. Where can they rate us?
You can go to ratethispodcast.com/spoilerpiece, and that will pull up whatever platforms you have on your phone or wherever you are. And you can rate and review us that way.
Perfect. And if you really, really like us, like really, 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 then you can become a patron on Patreon. And for $5 a month, you get to listen to exclusive weekly audio content. Like this week, we talked about Star Trek V. It's a fascinating conversation. You know, you don't want to miss it. You can also vote in monthly polls. We will be having a poll out very, very soon that we want you to vote in. And for $10 a month, you get to choose a film for us to watch each month, and we'll talk about it, which is pretty awesome and exciting. So we look forward to hearing from you, and we appreciate all of your support.
That's true. We do.
Yes, we do.
We do. And we love you. And these are weird, strange times. And we're so excited that you're listening to us. So thank you so much for that. We love doing this, and we hope you love listening to us. So my name is Megan Kearns. I'm a freelance film critic, editor of Bitchflix, and a member of the Boston Online Film Critics Association. You can find me on Twitter at OpinionessWorld, and you can find me on Instagram and Letterboxd at TheOpinioness.
My name is Dave Riedel. I am also a member of the Boston Online Films Critics Association, and you can find me all over the social tweets at Dave Sees Movies on Twitter and Instagram and Letterboxd.
And my name is Evan Crean. I'm co-chair of BOFCA and co-author of your 80s Movie Guide to Better Living. And you can follow me on Twitter and on Letterboxd as Real Recon.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks so much.
See you next week.
Stay safe. Bye.